Gewaltig. Zok the Heilige Gemara. We are in the middle of a discussion as follows. The Gemara had a discussion. Rava had a question. What happens if it was indirect? Which means you were durs on a kli, and the kli was not damaged. It moved over, it rolled over, and then when it rolled to its new location, there it got damaged. So is that called gufoi doing it, which would mean it would be regular tzroros that pays nezek shalom, or is that called koichai doing it, which would then fall under the category of chati nezek tzroros, which only pays chati nezek, according to the Rabbanim. Of course, according to Sumchas, anyway, it would pay nezek shalom. So Parshas Rava Shaila is according to the Rabbanon, who hold that tzroros only pays chati nezek, and he wants to know if it started off with guf. See, the classic case of chati nezek tzroros is when an animal steps on a stone, the stone projects, becomes a projectile, and the stone damages. That's the case of chati nezek tzroros. Here, the animal pushed the keli itself, and the keli went flying, and then the keli smashed against something somewhere else, and the keli broke. So it started off by the guf of the animal directly hitting the keli, and later on, did nezek happen to the keli? So the question is, do you look at how this whole chain reaction started, which was a direct contact between the guf of the behema and the keli, and then it's regular regel, which pays nezek shalom, or do you look at it basatavar mana? You look at the scenario at the point where the keli broke, and then it would be tzroros, because then the guf of the animal is not touching the keli that broke, and therefore it's tzroros only pays chati nezek. So that is the shiloh that we were discussing. And we're on the second line from the top, on Daf Yud Ches Amud Aleph. Tashma, Tarnagolim Shahayu Mechatin Bechevel Deli. There was a deli, a keli hanging from a string, and the Tarnagolim were pecking at it. Then Nivsak Achevel, the rope tore. Then Nishber Hadli, and the deli falls down and gets smashed. So the question is, what is the case over here? So Rashi says, Kosol Kadai Tachtai Day Shahayu Tarnagol. Since he was poking at the rope, it moved. It doesn't. It caused the keli to move. This galgalat leave an ishbar, and it broke in the new place. So once again, this is exactly the case of Rava, where the animal touched the keli, started a reaction in which it was moving, but after the animal was no longer touching the keli, the animal and the keli in its new location broke, which seems to be exactly the same case as Rava. And what does the Brisa say is the halacha in this case? Mishal nezek shalei. So you see, this is regel, not chati nezek of tzroros. Shemamina abasa meikar adin. Zog to Gemara, no. Tirgama achevel. Maybe the nezek shalei that you pay for is for the chevel that got torn. Break the Gemara. The chevel, it's not the derech for a chicken to eat a chevel. It's not food, which means it would be mishuna, which means it would be keren. But chevel mishunu, and therefore it should only pay chati nezek, Rashi says. And for the Gemara, this chevel was most belisha, the most belisha. It was smeared with dough. If it's smeared with dough, it's normal for a chicken to peck at it because it wants to eat the dough. So now it is shame. But the damages that we're discussing are the rope itself, which is the guf of the animal itself. So it's not tzroros. And that's why it pays nezek shalom. Freak the Gemara, but that's not what the Brisa says. The Brisa is not discussing the damages to the rope. The Brisa is discussing the nifsak achevel of a nishbar adli. It's the keli that broke. So once again, it's exactly the case of the suffix between Rava Shaila, if you say basar meikara or basar tavram. Zok to Gemara elasum chasi the Omar tzroros nezek shalom shalom. You can't bring a rye from here that you go basar meikara and that's why you pay nezek shalom. Maybe you go basar tavramana and really this is only tzroros. So why does the Brisa say you pay nezek shalom? Because it's going according to Sumchus, who else by tzroros you pay nezek shalom. If you want to say that this brisa is going according to Sumchus, let's look at the end of the brisa to see if it's possible for this brisa to be following the sheet of Sumchus. It says, Nitaz mimenu shever. The story goes on. First, the deli broke. After the deli broke, a projectile was dislodged from the deli itself. A broken piece of the deli went flying and broke a second keli. Nitaz mimenu shever v'nafal kliache v'shavra. What is the Brisa Paskin? Alarisha misal nezek shalei. So that makes sense according to Sumchus, if it's Basat of Ramana. But look at the next line. V'ala achray mishalem chati nezek. V'sumchus, if this is going according to Sumchus, well, this is also a case of Tzroros. It's a projectile that broke something. Mi is lechati nezek. Sumchus doesn't hold of chati nezek by Tzroros. Sumchus holds of nezek shalem by Tzroros. V'chiteiman, if you want to say that shiny leila sumchus bei nezek koichoi lekoyach koichoi, where does Sumchus say that Tzroros pays nezek shalom? That's if it's the koyach of the animal. He steps on something, causes a projectile to go flying and break something. That is where Sumchus says it pays nezek shalom. But if there's a chain reaction and that thing that broke now flies to break another thing, that's already koyach koichoi. Maybe there even Sumchus agrees that type of Tzroros of koyach koichoi only pays chati nezek. So once again, maybe this is the brisa. It's going according to Sumchus, and therefore you don't have a raya from the brisa if you say basar meikara or basar tovarman. Zok tomorrow you can't say that because v'lahad deboy Rabashi. Rabashi cleared this for a shaila. Koyach koichoi l'Sumchus. Is it koichoi dami, and it'll be chayiv nezek shalem, or lav koichoi dami, and it won't be chayiv nezek shalem. Tiv shitlei. We could be pushing Rabashi shaila from our brisa. Now that we're learning that our brisa is going according to Sumchus, well, our brisa says it's very the lafka koichedami, because our brisa says that on the secondary keli that got damaged, you pay chati nezek. So what's Rabashi shaila to mafurish a brisa the way you want to learn the brisa? El lav rabbanon, you must say that the brisa is following the sheet of the rabbanon, and the reason why you pay nezek shalem when the dli broke, it must be because you go basar meikara, even though the bird wasn't touching the keli when the keli broke. It's only the koyach of the animal, because the bird broke the rope and that made the dli break. You pay nezek, you pay chati net, you pay nezek shalem because that's not called Tzroros. You go basar meikara, that's considered the animal itself did the damage. Ushmamina basar meikara aslinan. So once again, you have a raya from this brisa that you go basar meikara. Amar Abibi bar Abaye, no, you still don't have a raya. Because who said the rope broke and the deli fell and smashed? No. Maybe the deli was dislodged from the rope, and then the chicken kept on pecking at the keli and pushed it until it broke. And therefore, it was always the guf habehema, the ka'azol minei minei. Therefore, this in fact, it doesn't make a difference. Even if you hold basar tavar mana, even when the keli broke, the animal was right there. So once again, we remain with a shaila. Rabbi shaila has remained unanswered. Do you say according to the Rabbanon, basar tavar mana, or do you say basar meikara aslinan? And the difference between the two would be: is it Tzroros, or is it actually the guf of the animal doing the damage, and it's regal or shame, and therefore you would pay nezek shalom. Beautiful. We didn't resolve this shaila, so let's try a different shaila. Boirav, chati nezek Tzroros. This is an anomaly. Chati nezek Tzroros is an anomaly. It has similarities to Keren because you only find one other place where you pay chati nezek, and that's Keren, which actually is a knas, or maybe it's moment, but it only pays chati nezek, and we also know that you only pay migufa. Your liability is limited to the value of your animal. But on the other hand, it's not like Keren, because Keren is mishuna. It's not the animal's normal pattern to behave this way. It's urche, it's regal, it's shane, it's something that the animal does do in its normal day. So because of that, chati nezek Tzroros is an anomaly. It has similarities to Keren by tam of chati nezek, but it also has similarities to regal because it's urche. So Rava wants to know, what should we do with this? Chati nezek Tzroros migufe mishalim. Is it exactly like the chati nezek of Karen, which only pays migufa? Your liability is limited to the value of your animal. Or you pay the chati nezek even if the chati nezek is worth a lot more than the value of your animal. And the Gemara elaborates on the shaila as we discussed. We never find when you pay chati nezek, you pay me'aliyah. Because where do you find chati nezek? By Karen, by a shor tam, and there it's migufay. Oy dilma me'aliyah mishalim. No, the chati nezek of Tzroros should pay me'aliyah. Why? You never find that this is the derech of an animal like shein and regal, that your liability is limited to the value of your animal. You always find whenever an animal is doing the damage that it's normally going to do in the course of its day, you have to pay in full. So therefore, Rava says chati nezek Tzroros have similarities to Karen, but it also has similarities to regal, and therefore our question is it pay migufei or does it pay minhaliyah? Tashma, this gets us into a complicated sugya. Hidos, we already had this brisa, and we're going to have it again. Hidos, if a chicken is jumping on something and it breaks, ain't a muad, it's not a muad. Yosy harez a muad. Fact Gemara, hidos can't mean what we think it does. That the chicken is jumping on the item, breaking it. Hidos al. How could there be a discussion? How could there be a machlekes about it? That's regular. Elolav, hidos can't mean regular. Rather, what it means is hidos vehitis. It was jumping on something, and that thing went flying, and it broke. Something else. So basically, we're talking about a case of chati nezek Tzroros. So what's the machlokes if it's a muad or not? Mandomer ain't a muad. The Tana who says it's not a muad because from a gufa mishal. He held chati nezek Tzroros. You pay me gufoi. So when he said ain't a muad, what he meant is you treat it like a shor tam in Karen. Mandomer muad, and the mandomer holds me'aliyah. And that's what the machlokes is really about. Me'aliyah mishal. So you don't have a raya. I can make a much simpler suggestion. Just like the Gemara made the same suggestion at the top of Amud Aleph, at the top of our Amud, when we were discussing the shaila of Basar Tavar Mana and Basar Meikaras Linon, the Gemara said, the sumchas for Rabbanan Kamipli. Maybe that's exactly what the shaila is, if it's a muad or not a muad, if it pays chati nezek or nezek shalem, which is exactly the machlokes of sumchas and the Rabbanan, and therefore you cannot bring a raya to our shaila of whether or not chati nezek Tzroros pays min aliyah. Now, naturally, the shaila of chati nezek Tzroros paying min aliyah is only a shaila according to the Rabbanan that you pay chati nezek. As Rav explained, the only tzat to say that you should pay migufay is because you don't find chati nezek ever that pays min aliyah. But according to some, because it holds Tzroros is nezek shalem, Rav has no suffix. It's surely min aliyah. Tashma. And this is a very long raya, and the Gemara has multiple pshatim in how to understand this Mishnah, and therefore we need to focus on it. Tashma. Hakelev shanoto charara. A kelev took a burning hot cookie from an oven. V'halach legodish. He went to a godish. V'achal hacharara. He ate the charara, and it lit the godish on fire. He dropped the charara, and it caused a fire that eventually got to the godish. So this seems like a case. The eating the charara is standard shein, but the lighting the godish seems like it's Tzroros, because he didn't directly light the godish; it was indirect. So this is the case of chati nezek Tzroros. And what is halacha? On the charara mishalem nezek shalem, because that's regular shein. Balagodish mishalem chati nezek. Frag the Gemara, my time. Why would he only pay chati nezek for the godish? It must be because it's chati nezek of Tzroros. Lav mishum dahavlu Tzroros. So now we've established that the pshat in this Mishnah is you pay for the godish chati nezek because of Tzroros, meaning it's going according to the Rabbanan who hold chati nezek Tzroros is only mechuyev to pay chati nezek. And here's the punchline: V'tani Allah. There's a Tosefta that is mefarish this Mishnah and tells us when the Mishnah says Mishalem chati nezek, it's migufay. So this is exactly what Rabbi Shaila was. The chati nezek of tzroros. Is it min ha'aliyah or is it migufay? You have a mefurish brisa that explains this Mishnah, which we understand to be referring to a case of chati nezek tzroros, that you only pay migufay. So that is the raya. But I want to take a pause for a second, because if you remember, 2 days ago we discussed a pig poking around in an ashba, and Rashi there said that when a pig pokes around in an ashba and then something goes flying, that is tzroros of regel. That is tzroros of regel. But Rashi said there, Rashi said there was tzroros of regel, and Tosfos said it's tzroros of shein. And I remember I asked Olam, how do you process this? What does tzroros of shein mean? But here clearly we have a case that's tzroros of shein, because the kelav shenot l'haror is for sure shein and not regel. And you see tzroros applies to shein. And here even Rashi says it. Even Rashi says it, and Rashi says right over here, the hainu shein, eating the haror is shein, you pay as a shalom, but lokas godish have it tzroros. Clearly it's tzroros of shein, the einay lakoichay, shehu maniach kana gechelas, the dog put the gechelas down here where he was eating it, and it lit whatever surface it was on. Now the fire went and spread to the Godish. Now I hope this answers the comment that was written in that said it's 2 separate actions. So Rashi says it's 1 action. While he's eating this harada, it's there on the ground, and it lights a fire that then spreads to the Godish. So therefore, Rashi understands, the Gemara understands that this is a case of tzroros, and it pays chati nezek, and the Tosefta explaining the Mishnah says it's migufay, and you have a raya to Rav Shaila that chati nezek of tzroros pays migufay. Frek the Gemara, v'tizbra, you can't learn pshat like you're learning, because if you read the end of this Mishnah, Rabbi Lazar is a dissenting opinion, and Rabbi Lazar says that even on the Godish, you pay nezek shalem. How could you explain the sheet of Rabbi Lazar? Why would you pay nezek shalem on the Godish? V'tizbra Rabbi Lazar nezek shalem migufei mi Ashkelon. According to Rabbi Lazar, it's nezek shalem. We need to understand why you pay nezek shalem. But whatever the case is, the Tosefta says it's migufei. According to Rava, never is a case of nezek shalem paying migufei. So clearly, the pshat in this Mishnah must be different, because if it's only because of tzroros, if you hold that you pay nezek shalem by this tzroros, maybe your belos holds like sumchas, then it's for sure min ha'aliyah. So your pshat in the Mishnah we have to reject, because it will not explain your belos. Ella, you know what you have to say? That this is not a case of shein at all. We have to say that this was a case of Karen. The dog didn't eat this gacheles in a normal way. He did it in a way that's not normal. And therefore it has the status of Karen. And therefore, we have a case of Karen, but the Karen occurred b'rshus hanizik. The Chachamim say that Karen b'rshus hanizik pays Kati Nezek, and Rabbi Lazar says Karen b'shus Nezek pays Nezek Shalom. El Chagoin Deshani Bal B'Gachelas, Rabbi Lazar Savala Krab Tarfin, Dama Mishona Karen b'Chatzar Nezek Shalom Mishalem. And that explains why it's Migufay. You know why it's Migufay? Because it's a Karen and a Shor Hamud. Now, based on this step in the Gemara, we need to understand the Tanakama. The Tanakama says that you only pay Chati Nezek, right? So let's see if we can understand why. So let's see Rashi. The dog took the gechelas. Oh, good morning. The dog took the gechelas in his mouth. And then he placed it down. The hainu shinui. That's a shinui. Therefore, this is not a case of tzroros. So therefore, it's not relevant to Rav Shaila. The b'tzroros kurchayu, if it was a regular case of tzroros, the chula alma me'alim mishal. Maybe you don't have a raya from our Mishnah. Maybe everybody hold when you pay min aliyah. So clearly, what Rashi is saying is the achilas hakikar was a regular case of shame. That's why you pay nezek shalom. But the way that Tzroros occurred, that the flame traveled, was done through an unusual movement of the dog, which would make it into keren. And the case here was Tzroros kirchayu. If it's a regular Tzroros, bein Rabbi Lazar, bein Tanakama, severe lukas sumchus, maybe everybody would all like sumchus the nezek shalom mishalem, and you pay, of course, min aliyah. Hilcha chacha, the shani b'Tzroros. Here, the Tzroros wasn't the Tzroros of Shein or Regel. It was a Tzroros of Karen, because he did something unusual to the dog. Therefore, Ka'amar Tanakama Chatzi Nezek, the Tanakama says Chatzi Nezek, Umegufoi Mishale, you pay Megufoi because every Karen Chatzi Nezek pays Megufoi, the Mishuna of told of the Karen. Rabbi Lazar holds you pay Nezek Shalem. Why? Because he holds like a Tarfin, who holds that when a Karen Tam that's Mazik, B'chachar Nezek, you pay Nezek Shalem. But nevertheless, even though a Karen, Tam, B'shus Nezek pays Nezek Shalem, he still only pays Miguf. So that explains the Mishnah. Speaking about Karen, and according to the Tanakama, you pay Chati Nezek Migufoi, and according to Rabbi Lazar, he also got Tarfin, that since it was B'shus Nezek, you pay Nezek Shalem Migufoi. Zaktim Rabbi, that's not a good reason to say that we're talking about Karen, because I have a way to get around that. You don't have to learn that we're speaking a case of Karen. Why? Because my time will look mukmustal kereb tarfin. Why did you still line this whole machlekes that Rabbi Lozo is a kereb tarfin and it's all a case of Karen? And the reason why he pays Nezek Shalem because Rabbi Tarfin holds that Karen b'shus Nezek pays Nezek Shalem. It's Mishum Nezek Shalem. It's because we needed to explain why, according to Rabbi Lozo, in this Mishnah, do you pay Nezek Shalem for the Kodesh? But I have a simple reason why I pay Nezek Shalem. Maybe Rabbi Lozo started like a sumchis. Maybe it was not Mishuna. Maybe everything was done properly and it was all told to the shade. So why did Rabbi Lozo say you pay Nezek Shalem? Because Rabbi Lozo doesn't pass like the Rabbanon, who says by Tzroros you pay Chati Nezek. Maybe Rabbi Lozo passes like sumchis, the Omar Tzroros Nezek Shalem Mishalem. But now let's take a break here. Let's review what we have over here. So now we're back to the original shot that it was with Tzroros, and it was Tzroros of Shein, and therefore, according to the Rabbanon, the reason why you pay Chati Nezek for the Godish is because it was Tzroros of Shein, and the Septa says Migufoi, so we're back to a Raya to Rava that you pay Chati Nezek by Tzroros Migufoi, so you have the Raya, but Rabbi Lozer holds like Sumchas. Sumchas has nothing to do with Rabbi Shiloh. Rabbi Shiloh was only in the Chatzi Nezek of Tzroros. But in the Nezek Shalom of Tzroros, that wasn't relevant. So you don't Tzroros Nezek Shalom. But the problem is, if you pay Nezek Shalom by Tzroros, didn't we say, then for sure it's Min Haliyah? Rabbi's only Shiloh was if it was Chatzi Nezek. But if it's Nezek Shalom, it's for sure Min Haliyah. So if that's the case, how can you explain Rabbi Lozer that you're paying Nezek Shalom because of Sumchas and you're only paying the Gufoi? Zok to Gemara, because v'savalak Rabbi Huda, the Amor Tzad Tamus b'mkoy mo'imedis. Even when you have a muad, and of course, Jane is always a muad. It's a muad meikaroi. The Tzad Tamus remains there, and since for the Tzad Tamus you only pay megufoi, even when you're paying Nezek Shalem, the Chatzi Nezek of the Tamus still remains megufoi. V'chikatani megufoi at Tzad Tamus. Correct Gemara, this makes no sense at all. Omer leir absama, already Rabashi Ravina. This makes no sense at all. Amor de shamet leir Rabbi Yehuda betam v'nasamuad. I understand when you're dealing with Karen that the first two negiches you only paid Chati Nezek because it was a tam, and you only paid Chati Nezek migufoi. And now by the third negicha, you now pay Nezek Shalem. You now pay Nezek Shalem because it's a muad. So there, it started off as a tam, it ended off as a muad, and therefore, the tzad tamus remains, and chati nezek you pay migufay, and the other chati nezek you pay min aliyah. But here, we're not talking about a case that was started off as a tam and went to a muad. We're talking about shade, which is muad mitchilosoi. So here, muad mitchilosoi, like our case of shane over here and tzroros, mi amar, mi shamet like. Surely Rabbi Yehuda didn't say that the tzad tamus remains when there was never a tzad tamus if we're referring to shane v'regel. So we're stuck now. The last pshat that the Gemara tried saying that the machlokes Rabbi Elazar and the Tanna Kama, whether or not you pay for the Gadish Chatzi Nezek or Nezek Shalom, is totally if you hold in like the Rabbanon or if you hold like Sumchus, we have to reject that. Because why in the world, according to Rabbi Elazar, according to Sumchus, that you're paying Nezek Shalom for this Tzroros, why would you pay Miguf? Elakika Amar Rabbi Elazar Nezek Shalom, you have to say it's a case of Karen. That's the only way to explain it. Could go into ayat. And what happened was Rashi explains like a very interesting hybrid. And Rashi says, let's have a look at Ella. If you want to say it's speaking by a case of Tzroros Kur Chayu, and what do you gain by saying that? What you'll gain by saying that is you'll have a raya that the Chati Nezek of Tzroros is Megufoi. If you want to insist on saying that the Shita of the Tanna Kama of this Mishnah, when you pay Chati Nezek for the Gadish, it's with the Chiyav of Tzroros, and therefore you'll bring a raya that by the Chati Nezek of Tzroros, according to the Rabbana, you pay Megufoi, we're going to have a problem because how are we going to understand Rabbi Elazar Shita, who says you pay Nezek Shalom? So here we're going to create a hybrid where the Mishnah will make sense. So he buys to look a bit Tzroros Kir Chayu Ulam Mifshid by the Rava, if that's what you want to do, you're not going to be able to say that it's a standard case of Tzroros where the first time you did it, it's already a mood. That won't work. Because if you're going to have that, we're going to have a problem with Rabbi Elazar, like we just said. How are you going to have Rabbi Elazar's case where you have Migufoi? Why would you have to pay Migufoi if it's a regular case of Nezek Shalom Kiurche? Ella, you know what you're going to have to say? We're talking already about the third time this happened. And the dog did something unusual for the Tzroros. Rashi said earlier, you put it on the floor, and then which is not the norm, and then it spread. So it's an unusual thing. So it started off as Tzroros of Karen. So the first two times it was Karen. And now we're up to the third time. And now our Mishnah opens up the scene. The third time it happened. The Ayit Shloisha Zimni. And the third time this happened, there the Tanna Kama says, you pay Chatzi Nezek. But why do you pay Chatzi Nezek? The Rabbanan hold that when you have a case of Tzroros that was done in an unusual way, although the first two times it's Karen, the third time it doesn't go to Karen Hamuit. The third time it goes back to Shane because now it becomes Urch. So it's a very interesting trivia question. How is it possible that when it's a Tam, it's Karen, and when it becomes a Muad, it changes to Shane? This is the case. Because now, after the third time that the dog did this, now it's a standard case. This is how he operates. This is how this dog rolls. So now it's merely Tzroros of Shane. And therefore, even though it's a mud mitchilason, you only pay Chatzi Nezek, because the Rabbanan hold by Tzroros, you only pay Chatzi Nezek. V'suloi. Hi Nami, the Shani V'ayid, even though this case of Tzroros happened three times, he became a muad, loy chomer me'muad mitchilasoi. We won't treat it more chomer than if it was a muad mitchilasoi, and if it was a muad mitchilasoi to do this, it would weiter fall under the category of Chatzi Nezek Tzroros. So you won't treat it like Nezek Shalom of Karen, because why should it be more chomer than if it was there to do this from day one? So it transitions to muad of shame. The ein hadol tzroros. There's no such thing as muad and tam by tzroros. Sheshina behen. So it never becomes a shar muad of Karen. It just transitions to become tzroros of rega. And therefore, when we dekatani migufoi, since it's a case of tzroros according to the Tanna Kama, and the Tosefta said you pay only migufoi the Chatzi Nezek, you have a right to Rav Shaila. For Rabbi Lozer. Why does Rabbi Lozer say pay nezek shalim? Because he holds sovereign of Tzroros kirchayu kirabonon the pligi asumchus. He also agrees that we're not going like sumchus. He's technically going to Rabbanon. And Ushani v'ayit nafka mitoldo the regel v'nasa toldo the keren. What happens is when you do this 3 times, it goes out of the category of toldo the regel. And we treat it as a toldo the keren. So Nochamal. Rabbi Lozer suffered the Tzroros kirchayu kirabonon the pligi asumchus. The only kirabonon, which means you only pay chati nezek. V'shani v'ayid, and once it does it twice, and it becomes a mu'id, nafka mitolda the regel, v'nasa tolda the keren. It does not become a tolda the regel, rather it remains a tolda of keren, and therefore v'yesh lohen ha'ada l'shalom nezek shalom. Therefore, it has the concept of mu'id, like by keren, where you now upgrade to nezek shalom because it's no longer tzroros of Shein or regel, it's now keren. And what happens when you pay nezek shalom? We know Rabbi Yehuda holds hachati migufoi. Half of the nezek shalom payment, like Rabbi Yehuda, like we just learned in Amar Aleph, still remains the same tam payment, which is chati nezek migufoi. And the other half, to be mashtem to the nezek shalom, is takim min haliyah. The tatamas b'mkoy memedes v'chati min haliyah. So that is a pshat that the Gemara blives with in the Mishnah, that it's a machloikis when it starts off unusual the tzroros. So it becomes a mu'id, does it transition to shein v'regel, which is now urche, which is what the Tanakama holds, and that's why you only pay tchati nezek, migufroi, or does it transition into a mu'id of keren, where you pay nezek shal? Gewaltig. So Zakluv Hakamivki, Maris over Yesh Hadol Tzroros, which is a Belazar, and therefore you pay nezek shalim. Umaris over Ein Hadol Tzroros, and it remains a Tzroros of Shein V'Regel, and you only pay Chati Nezek, and in either case, that Chati Nezek is Migufoi, Sai if it's Regel, and Sai if it's Keren, because we hold like Rabbi Yehuda that the Tzatamus been claiming. I'm sorry? All the way through? Or no, why would it be a time? Once it does it 3 times, it's a mu'id. But the question is, does it become a mu'id of Keren, like it started? Or do we say now, now it's Urchich, now it's Regel? Yeah, which would be mu'id Beikari. Elahad, the boy Rav. Rav had a new shayla. Yesh Hadal Tzroros, and Hadal Tzroros. The exact way we just explained the machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Lozer in this Mishnah, Rav has such a shayla. Why would Rav have such a shayla if we just illustrated, according to him, that's mamish the machlokes in the Mishnah? Ilar Abanon ein Hadal Tzroros, Ilar Rabbi Lozer yesh Hadal Tzroros. So once again, Rav is stuck. So now we're going to add one additional level of complication because this so far is not complicated enough. Amalak Rava, let me tell you what it is. Kimi boyeli lididi ali b'derabana the pligi alei b'sumpus. My whole shaila of yesh idol tzroros or idol tzroros is only according to Rabbanon, who hold that tzroros pei chati nezek. Aval hacha bein l'Rabbanon bein l'Rabbi Lozer kisumchus firu. So now Rav is changing, and he's saying that Sai Rabbi Lozer in our Mishnah here of the kelev that burnt the goddess, and Sai the Chachamim hold like sumchus that you pay nezek shalom, damer tzroros nezek shalom. So therefore, my shaila is in the Rabbana. Yes, you have a machlokes Rabbi Lozer in the Rabbana, but that's going according to sumchus. So now that our Mishnah is going according to sumchus, we have a big problem. Because Sumchus says by tzroros you pay nezek shalom. So why is it that the Tanakam of our Mishnah says that you only pay chati nezek for the Gadish? So now we have the whole new shot of the Mishnah. Why are you only paying chati nezek? The teretz is because it's not the 3rd time; it's the 1st time. The shani v'loyayin. We're talking about the 1st time the dog did this damage in a non-typical way. So it's still Karen, but it's Karen Tam. Karen Tam pays chati nezek migufoi. Gewaltig. And what is the svara of Rabbi Eliezer? We said it already earlier. Rabbi Eliezer holds that Meshuna Karen, B'shus Nizik, that it pays Nezik Sholem. Right? But the problem is, now we want to say that the Nezik Sholem of Karen, you pay Miguf Min Aliyah. So the Nezik Sholem, you pay Min Aliyah if the problem is the Tosefta said that Sai according to Rabbi Eliezer, you pay Nezik Sholem. Sai according to the Tanakam, you pay Chatzi Nezik, it's Migufu. But here we're saying that it's going to go to a Parfit, that even a short time who does damage, B'shus Nizik pays Nezik Sholem. So maybe it's Min Aliyah also. If it's paying Nezik Sholem, B'shus Nizik, maybe it's Min Aliyah. So how could our Bryce, how could the Tosefta say to Rabbi Eliezer that you pay only Migufu? So even the Shamas Tell Rab Tarfin Nezik Sholem. Tarfin, you said you pay Nezik Sholem. Migufoi, Mishamas Lay. Who said Rab Tarfin says it's Migufoi? Maybe once Rab Tarfin says it's Nezik Sholem, maybe it's Min Aliyah. So how could you say Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah, who holds you paying Nezik Sholem, Al Rab Tarfin could be Migufoi, maybe it's Min Aliyah. Maybe you treat it like a regular mood. More in. No. As a matter of fact, when Rab Tarfin said you pay Nezik Sholem, B'shus Nizik, he meant only Migufoi, not Min Aliyah. I'm not going to prove it. Because if you look up the Mishnah where the Mishnah quotes the Machlokes Reb Tarfin and the Rabbanon, where did Reb Tarfin get his halacha from? That Karen, B'shus Nizik, even Tam pays Nezik Sholem. You know where he got it from? He got it from a simple Kal V'chomer. Here's a Kal V'chomer. Madach Shein Beregel, which are Potter Legamri, B'shus Harabim. Nevertheless, B'shus Nizik, they're Chayiv Nezik Sholem. So Karen, which is Chayiv Chati Nezik B'shus Harabim, surely should be Chayiv Nezik Sholem B'shus Hayochid. It's a good Kal V'chomer. But the problem is, why don't you say Dayoy Lovoi Minadin Liyosh Kenidai? Where do we know the whole Chumrah of Karen is because it pays Chati Nezik? No. So then at the most it should pay Chati Nezik B'shus Nizik. But how do you know that it pays Nezik Sholem B'shus Nizik? Dayoy Lovoi Minadin Kenidai. So Dr. Tarfin holds, so if the Kal V'chomer is going to be Ogish Logan, if you say Dayoy, then you don't say Dayoy. So Rab Tarfin holds, Heicha the Mivrach Kal V'chomer Lo Yamrina Dayoy. Right? So now we have two ways we could say Dayoy. We could say Dayoy that it should only pay Chati Nezek, B'shus Nizik, but we could also say Dayoy that it would only pay Migufoi, B'shus Nizik. So Zok the Gemara in Meheicha Ma'isila Mi Karen B'shus Harabim. Where do I know that Karen B'shus Nizik pays Nezik Sholem from a Kal V'chomer of Karen B'shus Harabim? Dayoy Lovoi Minadin Liyosh Kenidain. Fact Gemara of Rab Tarfin less le Dayoy. He doesn't know the Dayoy. Heicha the Mirfach Kal V'chomer. Zok the Gemara, you're right. He less le Dayoy. Heicha the Mirfach Kal V'chomer. But Heicha the Lo Mirfach Kal V'chomer is le Dayoy. And here it won't be Mifrich. You know why? Because we could say Dayoy on the Migufoi, even though we don't say it on the Nezik Sholem. So therefore, you see here from Reb Tarfin Minei Ubei, from his Kal V'chomer, you see that although we're Minchayiv, a Karen B'shus Nizik, Nezik Sholem, it will only be Migufoi because of the Dayoy Lovei Minadin Liyosh Kenid. So Halacha L'Maisa, how does Rava learned the Mishnah where he wanted to prove from the Mishnah that you pay Migufoi by Chati Nezik Tzroros? He's going to learn that the case was where it was the first time that he did it, and it's going according to Sumchis. It's going according to Sumchis. So for Keret. So now if you make the whole Cheshbon, our Mishnah, what did the Gemara say? Lahad boy Rabbi Yeshidol Tzroros. There's either Rabbanan and the Tzroros, either Rabbi Lazar Yeshidol Tzroros. Amlach Rabbi Kimi Boy Ludi Alibah the Rabbanan. His child is Alibah the Rabbanan. So he had two shaylas according to the Rabbanan. Sai if Chati Nizik pays Miguf for Erwin Aliyah, and Sai if the Yeshadol Tzroros. Right? He had two shaylas. Right? Therefore, the Mishnah that we tried to bring a raya from, he has to have hold of him Shanan. And the Mishnah is going according to Sumchis, who holds you pay Torah as a Sholem. So you have no raya whatsoever to any of Rabba's two shaylas from the Mishnah. We don't even have the right to Megufa anymore because we're no longer talking about the Rabbanon. We're now talking about Sumchis, and the Maskana, the way Rav is going to learn Pshat of the Mishnah, is that we're going according to Sumchis that Tzroros pays Nezek Shalem, and the case of our Mishnah is a case of Karen. It's a case of the Tzroros that the dog did by bringing down the Golish was a case of Karen because it was Meshuna, and the Rabbanon holds you pay Chati Nezek even though it's B'shus Nezek, and you pay Chati Nezek, and of course you pay Migufoy because it's regular Chati Nezek of Karen, and Rabbi Loza holds like Reb Tarfin that you pay Nezek Sholem, but also only Migufoy because Daye Levin and Din Liyos Kanida. So our Mishnah that we brought, we tried to bring a raya like Migufoy from, or Yeshado, is now no longer relevant at all to Rava. It's all speaking in Sumchis, and the Mishnah is only speaking about Karen. And therefore, Rava Shaila remains A. B. Gavalti. We're going to stop here because this is where I stopped this morning because I came late. But it's a Gishmak Adaf. It's complicated, but once we break it down, I think it becomes much simpler. I'm happy that I didn't record this morning because I was too late because I didn't have such a clerk out in the Gemara that I have now after Chasrin at another time. Everyone should have a wonderful